This is a Subaru EJ25, so it's a 2.5 liter. It has a bad rod knock. Taking it out. So I'll give a few steps here. The easiest way that I've found to do it so far. Take the intake off. There is 12 millimeter bolts that hold it down in a couple different locations. The other one's on the back side over there. And then the same thing on the other side. Remove the wiring harness from it. All the hoses that go to it. And then you should be left with this. There are multiple 14 millimeter bolts that have to come out in order to get this engine out, but there's not as many as you would think, and they're not very hard to get to. So got the starter removed. This one's getting the clutch and everything replaced as well, so the clutch is going to come off with it, of course, being a manual. The throwout bearing is going to be mounted right here. You have the slave cylinder that mounts here. I don't even know where it's at right at the moment, but I know it's around here somewhere. I think it's tucked off on the side over there, actually. That's the clutch master cylinder, and that line actually goes off to the side over there. But they're 14 millimeter bolts. They look like this. This is a nut that I just screwed on to the end of it, that way I can keep up with it. That's the nut that goes down on the very bottom down there. You can access all of these bolts from the top side after the intake is off and the starter is off. I use two different size 14 millimeter or 9/16. This one's a 9/16, it's a little stubby. And then I used, excuse my mess, a 14 millimeter deep socket to be able to get the ones that are up at the top. You have the same amount of bolts and nuts on this side as you do the other. So there's a bolt here, there, one bolt. Oh, you can't even see that. I can see it, but you can't see it. There's a bolt here at the tip of my finger, and then the nuts down below that. It's gonna look like this. So there's a bolt here for the starter. These also go through to the engine block. So you got the bolt, the starter, the transmission bell housing, and the engine bell housing. And then the same thing with this one. And you have another bolt here that just goes straight through the transmission and to the engine bell housing. These are the studs that are on the bottom side. This is the EJ20, so I'm not going to be swapping this one in. I'm actually going to get ready to pull this one out, and the customer is bringing his own engine over here, which was supposed to have been an EJ25 anyways. He got this one because it was turbocharged and the turbo was messed up on it, and we didn't get the engine, we got an engine wiring harness that was cut, but you have to have the complete engine harness and dash harness and ECU in order to do this engine swap. You could probably convert a few things over, but in reality it's just easy not to put this engine in. Swap in an EJ25. If you needed it turbocharged, you could build the block and the crank and the connecting rods and then redo the heads to be able to allow it to support a turbo. Anyways, there's two nuts on the bottom side where the engine mount mounts to the So you take that nut off, you take your exhaust off, let the exhaust drop down in the back, not in the back, let it drop down underneath. And after you've gotten all of these bolts out, you can connect your engine hoist to it, pick it up and pull it out of there. You need to make sure that your radiator is out of there, your cooling fans are out of there, and your hoses are out of there. That way you have all of this room. This is a good 10 inches worth of room right here. Of course, you're not going to need that, because after you get this loose, you only have maybe 3 inches that has to come past the bell housing. This is the radiator. It has 2 pins in the bottom that mount to the core support, and then you have 2 brackets on the top side that mount it to the core support, the upper portion of the core support. You see those holes there, one on the other side, and this is where the radiator mounts to the core support via these holes. Not that hole. I don't know what that hole is yet. My advice, if you're taking all this out, if you're putting it right back together, you can put the bolts in separate containers labeled with some oil or WD-40 or something, because 90% of the time, if they're from 2005, they're going to be super rusty and corroded. You got steel bolts and aluminum, so if that gives you any idea, it's going to be corroded pretty bad. But yeah, anyways, I'm almost done pulling this one out. I've been out here for an hour working on getting this the rest of the way out. I've already started getting it out, and a previous time-lapse video that I've actually deleted. It was taking up entirely too much space because I was working on doing that one before I realized that they were not the same engine and would take about 3 times as much money to be able to swap it in. Your AC compressor, when you're doing this, just take it off and set it to the side. Leave the hose connected. You have a long enough hose there that you don't have to worry about it breaking. Trying to think if there's anything else. The wishbone on the backside, it's a pain in the butt to get out, but it can be done. You take the bolt out of here, take the bolt out from back there, and if I remember correctly, I had to pry it out of there because it didn't want to come right out. That'll allow the transmission to raise up or down, but you don't want to be moving it around too much. So if you have a jack, put the jack under the transmission and put pressure on it while you're jacking it up. That way jacking the engine up. When you get the engine up high enough to be able to slide off the studs, your transmission doesn't just drop straight down, break CV axles, or anything. Anything can happen. It's better to have a few extra precautions set in place just to keep from ruining anything. Anyways, my next step here is get the jack under the vehicle, jack it up, get under there and take the exhaust off and take the engine mounts out, then get my engine hoist up here and snatch this engine out, hopefully. It's a little difficult to do on shell and gravel, but if you have somebody that can help you, you can lift the engine up, get it off the studs, pull the engine hoist back, get out of there. You don't need to be in there. Where are you going? There's a wasp crawling on a transmission. Anyways, pull the engine hoist back just enough to be able to get the clutch and pressure plate and all out of the transmission. Then drag the car out of the way. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, share. I usually post videos, but here recently it's been so hot out that by the time I get back to the vehicle, my phone's so hot that it doesn't want to record, doesn't want to stay on, although it's a brand new phone. Anyways, thanks for watching.